Neil Gaiman's groundbreaking comic Sandman has finally had its live-action adaptation as a series on Netflix, with all its world-bending aspect-ruling glory. Dream and his siblings exist in realms that personify the aspect they represent, and just to make things easier, all of their names start with D. Not bad for beings that predate the English language by several thousand years. Want to meet the family? Of course you do. You clicked on this video. Why am I even asking? So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into it. The other Morpheus, who also wears black but adds some Robert Smith hair and a little bit of blue steel, the titular Sandman, the guy with a bunch of names. Dream, Sandman, Morpheus, Kaikul, Oneros, Daniel, well, that's another story. Before our tale begins, Dream has imbued some of his powers into talismans like his helmet, bag of sand, and a ruby that ends up in even wronger hands than the rest of the stuff, which is saying something because a demon had the helmet. Dream's dominion is the entirety of the unconscious. That also makes him the keeper of stories. Not the stories of people, the lives that they lead, but instead the story of all the lives that they didn't. It's a big realm and a huge responsibility, so when he goes MIA for decades, things really spin out of control. Like the rest of the Endless, he has full dominion over the dreams and nightmares, but does it with a complicated set of rules and procedures. When he gets around to dealing with humans in the waking world, his sand is able to transport him wherever he needs to go, even hell. The sand can also attract things from the dream realm that aren't where they should be. Being in on everyone's dreams and nightmares has given the Sandman a deep insight into other people's inner selves and their hidden ambitions. Still doesn't exactly make him a people person, but outside of his sister, he is at least not as dismissive of humans as the rest of them are. As she herself describes it, death was there when the first life took hold, and when the last life is finally extinguished, she'll be turning over the chairs and locking up existence. Death comes for us all, and fortunately in the world of Sandman, she's gentle and actually kinda chill, and the dream girlfriend of a lot of moody teenagers ever since she first appeared. Like the other Endless, her existence is a little enigmatic, facing the Santa Claus problem. There are 65 million deaths every year on average. If you broke that down to minutes, that'd be 120 deaths per minute, which wouldn't leave a lot of time to chat with her favorite brother or gently escorting a flirty soccer player to the other side. Part of it, as Death explains to Dream, is that she doesn't really have to be there for all of them. So if you get the gentle goth woman telling you that your clock has run out, you're probably pretty special in at least some way. The rest of it is handled over to her omnipresence. She can appear in a form that you can talk to, but one way or another, she's everywhere. She can also see down to the end of your line before you reach it, though she rarely gives you a heads up about pretty much anything. She can also imbue things with life, particularly when she feels someone deserves a second go. She can also just straight up refuse to help someone to the afterlife if she doesn't like you. Old Charlie earns an extended stay on Earth, so Death gave him an unpleasant immortality. Nothing at all like Hobbes, who made the most of it, except for some dreadful business ventures in the 17th century. And she's not restricted to politely asking the souls to move on to the afterlife. She's just really good at being gentle, so it doesn't really come up that much. But during Seasons of Mist, when the souls realized the warden quit, she had to concentrate her power to keep them where they belong. And like Dream, her appearance comes down to who is doing the observing. There's no escaping destiny. Or maybe there is. Philosophical questions about free will versus determinism aside, in the world of Sandman, destiny is both inevitable and a member of the Endless. While Death might talk about the beginning and the end, the real first one in, last one out of the Endless is destiny. He's also the grand champion of stoicism when it comes to the Endless, practically making Dream look like a chatterbox. He carries a book that contains the story of you and every other sentient being that has or will ever be, which is just awesome. This doesn't mean that you can just sit and read the entire universe in a go. The book only fills when events and decisions have set things on an inevitable path. Other times, events make their way into the book as they happen. While he has a realm surrounded by a hedge maze that is, ultimately, all mazes, but unlike Dream, who has to go around managing his creations or Death collecting souls, Destiny's job is pretty straightforward. He doesn't write anyone's destiny, he just reads it. He's blind in terms of little round orbs that focus light into a collection of rods and cones, that then translate these light waves into vision. But that's because he's not just looking at the 120 degrees in front of his face that everyone else does. He's observing all of sentient existence. He's actually watching us right now. Well, okay, he's not because he's a comic book character, but now you're gonna keep thinking about it, so you're welcome. For the most part, the Endless cover things that are inevitable, like destiny or death, or something that gives us the ability to imagine worlds. They're either stoic, super stoic, or really chill. But desire just makes you want stuff. And you can't just go around wanting stuff and then getting the stuff easily. An aspect can't live on the equivalent of popcorn chicken. The kind of desire that gets desire going is desiring something unattainable. Desire enjoys the effects that they have on people and isn't really big on consequences. What with them being a member of the Endless, they actually can get killed, but it's a whole thing. And someone eventually steps into the role. They are androgynous and generally appearing as whatever the observer finds beautiful. Usually that manifests as a living Nagel print, specifically the one that artist Patrick Nagel did for the cover of the Duran Duran album Rio that Gaiman used as inspiration for the look of Desire. Because remember, the 80s. You can actually view Desire as a being ruled by their own fleeting and impulsive desires, or as a kind of trickster, intent on putting out that no matter how reserved you pretend to be, you're still susceptible to other emotions. Are you starting to get that the Sandman comics are actually really complicated? Just some heady stuff. Naturally, Desire would have a twin, the aspect that comes when you can't get what you want, which is despair. As you can imagine by now, being an aspect of the concept of despair means that despair spends most of her time bummed all the way out. As the saying goes, misery loves company, and despair delights in the suffering and hopelessness of others. So, you know, a really fun person to be around. But that's the current despair. There was a chattier, more beat-up despair at one point where it was clear she was setting up situations that would end in despair. She even took credit for a certain son of Krypton, having convinced the Kryptonian god Rao to put people on an unstable planet and arrange for there to be one survivor living off on an alien to him world. It's okay though, the yellow sun gives him all kinds of crazy superpowers, so he'll probably be alright. Also, it turns out that he's not the only survivor, but that's a whole other thing. Now, most of the DC connections were removed from the Netflix adaptation, so if we do see upbeat Despair, which sounds a little weird, she'll probably be telling a slightly different story. Maybe they'll just surprise us all and bring in Superman. Who knows? At this point, it should be clear that Endless is a bit more of a euphemism. In the case of the baby of the bunch, she started out as Delight. At some point in the past, Delight went off the rails and became Delirium. As the aspect of Delirium, it's a bit hard to get a straight answer out of her, even if she ends up occasionally saying truer stuff than her siblings are really ready to deal with at the time. Every once in a while, if it becomes necessary, she can sort of pull it together and become less scatterbrained, but she says that the process of doing that hurts. Even her shadow gets in on the weirdness. It doesn't follow her shape, but she can pick it up Peter Pan style, which is actually a little creepy. She's also the only Endless whose appearance acts more like a mood ring than adjusting to the perception of who's looking at them. If you think of Desire as the reason that you don't want to come home for Thanksgiving, Destruction would be the one that pulled that trigger a while ago and no one wants to talk about it. Before the events of the comic and the now Netflix series, Destruction hung up his sword and walked away from his realm sometime around the 17th century and hasn't looked back since. He never told his siblings why he did that, which actually prompted Delirium to enlist Dream to help her find it. Destruction, as you can imagine based off of his name, brings the kaboom. Just like death is warm and comforting, Destruction is a largely jovial being who viewed his role as an essential part of the creation process. In order to build something new, you have to first tear down the old. Once Delirium and Dream found Destruction, he told them why he walked away. During the Age of Reason, he saw the rapid development in weapon technology that would eventually lead to the atomic bomb. Destruction, growing a conscience apparently, decided that he didn't want his fingerprints on that, so he just sorta upped and quit. He didn't die though, so his realm still exists and things still get destroyed. It just turns out that no one is at the wheel. Unlike dreams that are chaotic and need supervision, once humanity started to develop the science of war, the process was more or less on rails to where it was headed. Which might be the single most depressing part of the entire Sandman comic series. You know, when you have that long view of space-time and existence, you can organize things so that when your names end up in English, they all start with the letter D, despite predating the letter D by millions of years. At least I have to imagine that they had a hand in that coming to be. Just fits too well to not be random happenstance.